Hello, Gothletts, and welcome. Make yourself a drink and get comfortable, and join me for more stories to fall asleep to. Last week I did use go to sleep to, but I feel like fall asleep to is just more suitable. It really helps our channel if you like and subscribe. We have a website which is deadchatty.uk, and we do also have social medias where you can find an array of content. This week I got inspired by a phenomenon in my house, and we call it our Pixie portal. Don't know if other houses have this, but wherever I've lived we've always had one. I mean, you might call it by another name. What it means to us is when you've had an item and you've put the item somewhere, you go back for it and it just disappears. There's no one else in the house. You don't know where it's gone. You just assume you've put it somewhere different. So for weeks, you search high and low for this item. It could be a key. It could be a book. It could be a piece of clothing. It's always small. So as I say, for weeks you search for this item. High and low. You can't find it anywhere. You've ransacked the crotch goblin's rooms. You ransack the kitchen. You look everywhere. You go out. You come back. So there's been no one in the house. And it's there in the middle of the floor. And it's always in the middle of the floor. We don't have it happen a lot, but it does happen at our house. Do you have anything else that happens the same? We have used every possible way to try and debunk this. We've thought, is it our pets? Not our pets? Is it the crotch goblins? They're my children. It's not them. For it always reappears when the house has been empty or there's just been one of our pets in. Recently, because we no longer have a dog, we just have a cat. It's happened when the cat's been out, so we can definitely exclude him. If any of you listeners have got any idea of what this could be, please let me know. So on the back of this, I dive down the rabbit hole to have a look for any other cultures that have anything similar. As always, my research is from stories, books, podcasts, and websites. So in England, where I'm situated, and on the borders of Scotland, they have two similar household deities, spirits, creatures, whatever you'd like to call them, called Brownies and Hobs. We'll begin with Brownies, or as the court say in Scotland, Brownies. I've probably mispronunciated that. I do apologise. So these appear to be helpful and come out during the night, where they would do various chores around the house, such as cleaning up, cooking, and in some instances they would help do farming tasks. And these stories come back when a lot of people had different types of farms. Now, to get this, say, level of service, or just have the brownies helping you out, it said you need to leave milk or cream. Basically, any food or sweet treat, a cake, as an offering to the brownie or hob, and you need to leave it by the hearth so they know exactly where to go and get it. And leaving it by the hearth comes from the hearth being the centre of the home. So it's where people would gather, tell stories, keep warm, heat the food up, cook the food. The hearth was the central hub. One thing I have found looking, and in many counts of brownies, is that they could be offended extremely easily. And if you did insult them, or they felt like they were being taken advantage of, or you forgot to leave that offering of the food or the sweet treat, they would become mischievous. And they would pull pranks. Now, they could become malicious as well, and you'd really have to annoy them to get them to become malicious. And the entity they changed into when they became malicious would become known as a brownies or brownie. It's the UK version, the English and the Scottish version. But they do seem very similar to domesticated spirits of ancient Rome, which are called Lars. One thing that all the literature agrees on, and it's the same in various stories that I've found, is the description of the brownies. So these creatures are described as being tan-skinned, brown, ugly, covered in hair, dirty, dishevelled, in some instances slight deformities outside of what we'd consider normal human appearance. In Scotland, some of the stories even say that they had no nose, just a hole in the middle of their face. I always grew up with the assumption that brownies were small. From the stories I'd heard, that's what I grew up with. These were small creatures that came out and went into hiding in holes. It's not the case, as I found out. A lot of them were human-sized or larger. Although, because stories have changed through the generations, as the stories have changed, they have become smaller. So that probably explains why the stories I grew up with, brownies and hobs, they're all small. One thing all the stories have in common is that they were capable of turning invisible when they needed. Kind of much like the Toy Story scenario, if you've ever seen that film, when they shout like there's a human coming and his mum's coming, and they all just kind of drop down in the places they were to avoid detection. Brownies, if they could perceive someone coming, hear someone coming, could turn invisible. They also could appear as shapes of animals. So if you're out and about and you think you saw an animal but it didn't move and then it's gone, maybe it was a brownie. What I didn't know, and I did wonder, is in England we have the Girl Guides. Before you get to the Girl Guides, you start off in the Rainbows, and then you go to the Brownies, and then finally Girl Guides. Looking back, Girl Guides did become popular around the 19th century, and this was about the time that a book by Juliana Horatia Ewing, hope I pronounced that right, which described brownies, came to be. So if you didn't know, Brownies is the younger version of Girl Guides, as I previously said. And what you do when you go, you learn skills. So you'll learn sewing, cooking, how to mend clothes. Also, you do charity work, and these help you earn achievements and accomplishments, which are badges, and then you've got a sash and you can put the badge on. Well, that's what happened when I was there. We're going back quite a few years. Basically, all these skills help you set you on the right path for life. And you can see the correlation between brownies and hubs there. So let's go back to some of the stories surrounding brownies. Brownies are said to have been motivated by friendships they build and what they like to do, what they fancy. And may sometimes do extra housework out of their normal duties. And there is a story that demonstrates this, and it's from Balquam. And this brownie fetched a midwife for the lady of the house when she went into labour. There's also a description here I have from 1703, so 320 years ago, from John Brand, and this is the description he had of Shetland. So this is the Scottish brownies. Not above 40 or 50 years ago, every family had a brownie, or evil spirit so called, which served them, to which they gave a sacrifice for his service. As when they churned their milk, they took a part thereof, and sprinkled every corner of the house with it, for brownies' use. Likewise, when they brewed, they had a stern, which they called brownies' stern, wherein there was a little hurl, in which they poured some wort for a sacrifice to brownie. They also had some stacks of corn, which they called brownie stacks, which, though they were not bound with straw ropes, or in any way fenced as other stacks used to be, yet the greatest storm of winds was not able to blow away straw off them. It's great to hear the positives that people are saying of brownies, but there are some negatives, and we'll mention some. We'll also speak more about hobs. I've found another story of brownies, and it's a story which relates to them being invisible or taking forms of animals, and we did mention this earlier on. This story is from, if I can pronounce it right, Peeblesshire, and it's of two maids who stole a bowl of milk and a bannock. Now these were left out for the brownie as an offering. So the maids stole these, and get my words out, and snuck off somewhere to go and sit and eat together. When the brownie saw this happening, he wasn't best pleased. He followed the maids where they had sat, and he turned himself invisible. When the maids started to consume the bannock and drink the milk, he decided he was going to steal the food from them. So as you can imagine, and I'm laughing because I know what's coming, there's these two maids, and every time they go to have a drink or have some food, it's literally disappearing. As they go to take a sip, it's gone. As they go to put it in its mouth, or go to put the food in their mouth, it's gone. And due to this, they started arguing with each other, and they began blaming each other, when in reality, it was the brownie that's stealing his offering back. I'm just hoping that he saw the maids do this and he doesn't kind of get offended with the household, because they did leave, the offering out for him. It said, finally the brownie laughed and cried out, ha, 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 brownie, hasta. So he got his revenge there. There's another story here about a brownie and how he was driven away by given a name. Obviously, it's not his real name. And I'm guessing, if brownies did have names, there was like nicknames, although you couldn't name a brownie. So this brownie wanted Alma Burn near, and Pilotry in Perthshire. Again, sorry if I've mispronounced any words. It was said that this brownie was often heard splashing in puddles of water and just generally having fun with the water. He would then go up to the nearby farm every night with his wet feet. If anything was out of place, he would tidy it, put it all in order, which sounds absolutely great. Very nice brownie for doing that. On the other hand, if anything was tidy, he would hurl it around and make it an absolute mess. So they was left with this quandary. Do they leave the house a mess, not really wanting it a mess, so it gets clean? Or do they tidy it to have a presentable home for this brownie to then come in and literally undo everything? The people of the surrounding area obviously heard these stories and feared him, and they wouldn't actually go up the road on the night where this brownie would mess in puddles and water. So a gentleman who was returning home from market one night, he actually came across this brownie, and the brownie was splashing in the water, and the gentleman gave the brownie a nickname, Puddlefoot. The brownie was absolutely horrified by this and exclaimed, I've gotten a name, 'tis Puddlefoot, they call me. And he was never seen again. He just vanished, gone forever. I did previously mention that from ancient Rome tradition, there was very similar spirits called Lars. But these were more envisioned as a protective spirit of deceased ancestors. So not only were they known for looking after the household, there were servants to the household, and they were seen as protective. When a lot of superstition was rife and about. I have found a darker story which goes along the deceased lines for brownies, and it's about the ghost of a deceased stable boy who was murdered by one of the lords of Hilton Castle. And And there's a lot more to the story. This is just a brief part of it. And the people who apparently saw the apparition of the boy described him as being naked, and he was said that he was cleaning up anything and everything he could find, especially if something was untidy. Going into a little bit more folklore around them and different cultures, there's Hawaiian folklore, which I found about, again, I hope I don't butcher it. I'm really no good at pronouncing odd words. It's the Menayune. And there's a slight difference with these being compared to Brownies, as we know from the UK. They're actually portrayed in Hawaiian folklore as a race of dwarf people. And they carry out work during the night. Now, if you haven't guessed by my accent at times, I'm from Yorkshire. And there's quite a lot of Yorkshire lore with Brownies, Hobbs, and I've got a little bit here. So the Brownie obviously is more Scottish and northern UK. As we come down a little bit, we get Hobbs. And as I said earlier, these are very similar. There's not much difference between the Brownies and the Hobbs. It's basically the names. There's a bit of folklore around Hobbs and Boggles around Yorkshire, especially North Yorkshire. We actually have a crevice near Whitby, and it's called Boggles Hole. And that's got some folklore surrounding Hobbs. Around it, we've also got Hob Hole as well. There's one story, and this is from Runswick Bay in Hob Hole, and it's a story about a hob, surprisingly. The hob was said to be extremely helpful and live wild in a cave. Now, hobs are quite solitary, and they like to be indoors and outdoors. It isn't like they'll always be inside or always outside. They like the both. One child was able to be cured from whooping cough, and back then it was called kink cough, and this does play a role a bit later on. So it said parents would bring their ailing child to the hob in his cave. The parents would bring their ailing child to the hob in his cave, and they would recite the following: Hob, hole, hob, my bairn's got on to kink cough, take it off, take it off. It's nice to hear of how these creatures, even though they're ugly in appearance and, quite feared in a sense, you've got to respect them. They did actually have that proper respect, not from fear. So I do have an instance of a hob being mischievous, and it was in Sturfit Hall in Yorkshire, and a family wanted to thank the hob for his work. I don't know if I have previously mentioned it, but hobs and brownies are predominantly male. There is some exceptions to this, and you can find, if you Google, you can find Maggie, I can't remember her name now. There is a Scottish hob, and she actually killed someone. So as I was saying, this family wanted to thank the Hob for the work, and they really wanted to show appreciation for everything the Hob did. So they left a small hat and a cloak for the Hob who'd been helping them. Obviously, we know that leaving gifts of clothing offends Hobs and Brownies. It said that the Hob said, "Ha, a cap and a hood, Hob'll never do me good," and was never seen again. And it's great when you're reading these stories, if you go online and have a look at them, they do take the direct sayings, which, if you can say it right, have that twang to them. It's like if you're reading something in Cockney, it automatically does it. And with that, and this one's going to be harder for me to do, there's another Yorkshire Hob. And this one, he's from Hart Hall. And he was offered a shirt, and he refused without warning the work shirt he was offered. "Do you nod mun hair, nowt but an hardy amp. He'll come near me, nowhere to bury no stamp." And I had a hard time understanding that one. And again, once he was offered this, he wasn't seen again. Hobs are also mentioned in a lot of popular culture nowadays. There is the Dresden Files, and Hobs in there are eyeless creatures who burn in light. They serve the Queen of Mab of the Winter. I've not actually seen the Dresden Files. I have heard about it, so it's interesting to see Hobbs in there and how people portrayed them. There's a video game I do know, and it's a Lionhead Studios game, and it's the Fable franchise. So Fable, Fable 2, and Fable 3. They do have some adversaries in their games, so some enemies, and they're known as Hobbs, and they're spelled Hobbes. And the lore behind those Hobbs is they're a mischievous element of the Hob, and they was created from the children who misbehaved and were captured. A lot of what we do see about Hobbs they are mischievous. Now, there's one very noticeable Hob I'm going to mention. Before I mention him, there is plenty more Hobbs referenced in videos, literature, films. There's loads. I could be here all day. But this one, and you might already be thinking about it, it's from J.K. Rowling series Harry Potter, and it's Dobby, who is referred to as a house elf. I don't know if J.K. Rowling moulded Dobby on a hob or brownie, but obviously there's similarities there. If I can get my words out. And one way to dismiss Dobby is by giving him a gift from his master. Then he can leave that service and leave the house. Obviously, Dobby was gifted a sock. I'm not going to go much further into this now. There is more folklore on Scandinavian as well as Manx, and there's Irish, and there's a lot of different variations of brownies. There's Welsh ones as well. Reading this and doing my research has made me think that maybe I don't have a Pixie portal. Maybe I have a brownie in my house. Can I remember the mess my crotch goblins leave and none of it ever's cleaned up overnight? So no, that can't be true, unless I've offended a brownie in some way. Bet the cat has been eating the offering for the brownie. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think I've got a brownie or a hob? Or is it just a random pixie portal? Whatever I have in my house, I feel comforted to know that it's nothing malicious, maybe mischievous, for it has no intent on causing harm. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much if you've made it this far listening to me drone on. I appreciate everyone who listens. If you'd like me to research anything, please drop a message or comment. Likewise, if you want to hear more tales of the strange happenings from my home, let me know. So stay safe and good night, my Gothletts.